All right, here we are. All right. Nikhil and I have been working hard on extension security for the past year, and specifically Sandbox Extensions. And we're really excited to share all of the new things that we've made and some best practices in general with extensions and security in extensions. So just a little bit of context for where we live in the overall developer platform picture. We are right over here in extensibility. We've got a lot of different ways to interact with the product and enhance it. Today we'll be talking specifically about extensibility, which has to do with two things. We're gonna do a fun little game, get you guys warmed up, okay? First one is closing the loop. So if you guys could just come with me, just do this. Put your arms up, make a circle, okay? Closing the loop means finishing, you can stop now, it's okay. Closing the loop means connecting your experiences, end-to-end experiences, filling out a form in product or in a website around it, embedding Tableau in your workflow. And the other half of extensibility is making it shine, right? I'm not gonna make you do it, but two things, closing the loop, making it shine, or lighting it up, lighting it up, which really just means making it really exciting and visually appealing, making it really have an impact on your customers. So the developer program in general is super awesome, and I highly recommend that you join it. It gives you access to some awesome goodies as well as materials and a place to ask questions about the things we're talking about today. This slide or this link will be available again at the end of the presentation, so you don't have to rush to look at it now. So, So let's talk about what you're going to learn today, what you should be able to answer after you leave this presentation. So the first thing is, what is an extension? So probably some of you already know what this is, but when you leave, you should be able to answer the question, what is a dashboard extension? Why are they cool? And how can I use them? The second question that you'll be able to answer is, well, first, dashboard extensions. After you know, dashboard extensions are very cool. They're very useful. They can help me in some way. But how can my team use these safely and have some confidence that they're not going to cause any problems for us, right? How can we do them in a secure way and implement them on site? And finally, what do these changes mean for me personally, on my team, action items for you personally? So hopefully we talk about something that you can implement directly at your business. All right, so let's start. So what are dashboard extensions? So this is a dashboard. Maybe you've guessed where the extension is. Maybe you haven't. It's this thing in the lower right corner. This is a Sankey diagram. This is very, very, very hard to do in Tableau by itself, like impossibly hard. But it's very pretty, and sometimes it's useful. There are people at your business who likely want that kind of functionality and need it to be able to present information in a way that's exciting and engaging, which can sometimes be hard. Basically, dashboard extensions are web applications which provide additional functionality to your dashboards. So these live inside the dashboard, and they'll either hook up to external services or as standalone items produce value for you on top of what you usually do. Yeah, they're basically awesome. So let's figure out how we can use them without breaking something else. Here's some examples. This is called Kepler. It is a 3D mapping tool, allows you to show data in a very unique way. In this case, they're mapping out baseball hits and locations of them, and you can interact with it all sorts of ways. Now, that is not, that we have so many extensions in our gallery currently, and among those are everything from data analysis, integrated AI solutions that you are sending your data off, and a third-party service is processing them for natural language generation and write back and all sorts of awesome things. Now, that's great and cool and all, but how do they actually work? So before we can talk about how to properly secure them and administer them, we have to actually know what these things are. So a dashboard extension is this web application that lives inside of your dashboard. So it's basically a web request out to someextensiondeveloper.com, and it sends back your extension front-end code, and it might send back information back and forth to that extension developer's website for processing or additional resources, etc. Now, it can also go off and get great things like jQuery or Bootstrap or other third-party vendor solutions. Now, that means it can also go to evilcorp.com. Now, pretty sure unless you work for EvilCorp, you don't want your data going to evilcorp.com. Some of you may work for EvilCorp, I apologize. But we need to figure out a way to, just to mitigate this. So our first, so before we talk about mitigation, a little bit more, right? Why do we care? So data exfiltration is, the gist of data exfiltration is anytime your data goes somewhere, you don't want it to go, right? So in the case of extensions, it's very simple and easy for an extension to pick up your data and send it wherever it wants your data to go. But you don't necessarily want that. You probably don't at all want that. Anyway, the core problem here is that your data is likely generating you revenue. It could even be not your data, it's someone else's data, and you are managing it through your visualizations. You're a contractor. There are many different ways that you might lose your data and be upset about that. So let's talk about our first line of defense, the safe list. So in Tableau Server, there is a list in the settings where you can explicitly call out extensions that you want to run. By default, in Tableau Server, your only extensions which are in this list can run. That does not apply for desktop. Nikhil will talk some more about options for that soon. But in server, this is our first line of defense. It's very useful when you have network connectivity requirements for your extensions. If you're using an extension that absolutely needs to talk to an external server, you would want to use the safe list to ensure that only that extension gets access in your dashboards. However, some caveats. These extensions must be vetted. So you have to look at the code, look at the kinds of things that it does, make sure that it is the kind of extension that you're actually looking for in your product. You have to trust the developer of that extension usually via a legal binding contract of some sort saying that they aren't going to do anything crazy with your data and that they have proper security practices. And then lastly, once you've done these things, the code can change. So, at any given time when a dashboard loads, it makes that request to their server, and they are giving you a guarantee that they're not going to break things, but they could break things. So you have no personal guarantee that something didn't get introduced that would leak data or cause problems. So, what else do we got? Sandbox extensions, brand new, awesome, super cool stuff. Why would I want an extension that can make network requests and requires me to vet it and lives on an external server where the code can change if it should never make a network request? So, Sandbox extensions run in Tableau's hosted environment, and we guarantee that they are not changing all the time. They'll be versioned, etc. And they cannot make network calls. So you can't, as a sandboxed extension, you couldn't be a natural language generation tool or any kind of software that takes the data, moves it to another server, does processing on it, and brings it back. There's still some possibility for local functionality that is similar to that, but you're not going to get the same level of power and connectivity with machine learning and stuff like that. So there's still a place for non-sandboxed extensions, but these ones do not make network requests. Let's talk about how that works a little bit, okay?
Which version are those in? Is that in 19.3 now?
19.4 is the official release of sandboxed extensions. There is, for development and testing purposes, there's some availability in 19.3, but the basic useful functionality is in where you don't get prompted for them, and they're fully secure in 19.3, sorry, is the best way to answer it. But in 19.4, they're actually deployed. Let's do questions at the end. We actually have set aside, well, how do I say this? Keep them in your head. We try to make the presentation shorter so that there would be lots of time for questions, because I know there will be some questions. Okay, so let's talk about overview of how they work. So the thing we're trying to solve is that network connectivity part over here, right? How do we do that? Well, the first thing we do is we host them on our server so we can do some magic with them on the way back to Tableau. And in that magic, we use a web standard technology, content security policy, and we invert it. So instead of protecting them from network access, we say, no, you can't do this network access. So when that happens, they are only allowed to grab resources they need from our servers, and all communication is for static resources. We'll go into a little more detail on the development side later. Yeah, so that's the basic gist. We host them, so the code is not changing, and we add some security policies which prevent them from making network requests. There's that, of when it's available, right? So, Sandbox extensions, in summary, are awesome, also awesome, and they're available in 2019-4 and on, and please use them if you can. Okay, let's see. Okay, great, so now Nikhil's gonna come up, and I'm gonna turn my mic off so we can not do a bunch of feedback. And we'll talk about some specifics about administering Tableau in general.
It's off. Can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me? Oh, that sounds awesome. Okay. So we have established that sandbox extensions are awesome, right? Sean's told me n number of times that they're awesome. But I can still see some skeptical faces in the audience. So let's see if we can do something about that. I have a question for you. What do you guys think when I say data breach? What comes to your mind? Anybody? Sorry, come again? Profit and loss? Nice. Nice. Exposing personal data out there. Anybody else? Sorry, come again? Data theft? Identity theft? Nice. Nice. I have just one image that comes to my mind when I see data breach. It's this guy, right? I am always scared that there's some guy somewhere in a dingy basement somewhere sitting with his hoodie on, having access to all my data, credit card, everything, right? So I'm always scared. So what do we do so that your data remains safe? Let's talk about how this guy looks in real life. For those of you who don't know him, this is Tamas Foldy. He is a Tableau Zen master. He's a CTO of Star Schema, and he is the premium Tableau hacker. He generally does stuff with Tableau that my PM goes to him and says, don't do that. Just don't do it, okay? So we had contracted him. For 15 days, we sent out all our dev server and all the resources available to us to him so that he can pen test, he and his team can penetrate testing on our code. And at the end of 15 days, this is what they came back with. They could not exfiltrate any data over the internet after hacking through it for 15 days. So that should give you a little bit more confidence as to why we are recommending sandbox extensions to you, right? Okay. We talked a lot about sandbox extensions and why they're awesome. Now I want to give you some goodies, like how do you use sandbox extensions, right? So let's talk about Tableau Server first. What are the changes to sandbox extensions in Tableau Server? Sandbox extensions are by default safe listed in server. What does that mean? I have a quick demo for you. So I'm going to log into a site. This is our custom internal pod, so don't look at anything. It's internal, don't look at anything, just look at the. So I'm just going to the settings, and I'm going to go and click on the extensions tab. And let's see if this works. Awesome. So if you see, there's a, for people who have used this site before, we have a new option right there where my mouse clicker is, and can I do this? Okay, right this. So I'm not going to read that, but what that basically says is that if that is enabled, all your sandbox extensions are by default safe listed. What that means is that when a user adds an extension, sandbox extension to their dashboard, they don't have to go ahead and explicitly whitelist that in this site. Isn't that awesome? Now, for example, some of you have like hundreds of sites, and you don't want to go and manually whitelist stuff in each and every one of those sites. So this is a really awesome way to, and for your information, this checkbox is enabled by default. So if you do not want this to be the case, you have to go and disable it for a specific site. Okay, let's talk about the next thing. So we talked about server. What about desktop, right? So I think some of you must have used extensions in desktop before. And for those of you who had concerns about extensions in desktop, we had something for you in the previous release. What was that something? We had a registry key for Windows and a plist setting for Mac, which basically said that don't enable extensions on desktop. And what we wanted to do this time was to give you a little bit more granularity over that, right? So what we wanted to do was, let's enable extensions, but let's just enable sandbox extensions. So we're giving you a new registry setting, which is called disable network enabled extensions. What does this mean? Okay, I should give you a bit of background about what is a network enabled extension. Anything that's not sandboxed is network enabled. Means it has access to the internet, it can go and get cool ML engine, it can go and get jQuery, it can also exfiltrate data to evil corp. So how does that look? Okay, I have a script here, which is, so this is on my Mac, so I have a script here which has two settings. The first one is disable extensions, and I'm setting it to 0, which means I'm setting it to false. The next one is disable network extensions. I'm setting it to 1, which means it's set to true, which means that extensions are enabled, but network-enabled extensions are disabled. I've run that script, and let's see how this looks in the UI. Okay, I have 19.4 desktop here. I'm going to open one of our sample workbooks. Superstore, I generally guide towards this one, and it's going to take a couple of seconds to open up. And okay, so once I open this up, I'm going to add a couple of extensions to this. One of it is network enabled, and the other one is sandboxed. And let's watch how they look. So here's me, that's the extension spill at the bottom. I'm going to drag that in. And this should be a very familiar flow to people who have used it before. If not, it's basically selecting a T-Rex file. The T-Rex file has information on where the extension lives. So the first one is a storytelling extension, which is not a sandbox extension. And as soon as I open it, you should see a permissions dialog. We allow you to select OK, and there's a message over here. Again, I'm not going to read the message, but basically the gist of it is that network-enabled extensions are being blocked by the admin. It's very clear your users know what's going on here. And the next one, I'm again going to drop in an extension pill in the dashboard and going to select an extension. This time it's going to be a sandbox extension. And let's see how that looks. That's pretty quick. And that's a sandbox extension. It's loaded successfully. And your users have this awesome capability without the fear of data getting exfiltrated, right? And next up, okay. We talked about how extensions, what can you control in desktop and server? How about how do you identify a sandbox extension? Let's say you have a dashboard that has an extension in it, and you want to know if it's a sandbox extension or not. How do you do that? I'm going to walk you through a very familiar flow, and we have a little bit of small tweaks here and there which should help you identify what an extension is. So here at the bottom right of the screen, I have a performance insight extension added to my dashboard. The dashboard's, again, one of our starter dashboards. For those of you who don't know what a performance insight extension is, it's really awesome for me because I end up doing a lot of dashboards for analysis of, like, we have extension services and we need to know how our service is functioning, if there is any glitches, any errors going on. So I have a bunch of dashboards, and every time sometimes my dashboard gets slow, this extension will basically tell you why is my dashboard slow? Do I need a new extract? Do I have too much data in a dashboard? Should I split it up into multiple dashboards? So it's a really cool extension. So here what I'm going to do is I'm going to open the context menu and go to the About dialog. Let's see how that looks. The dialog is very familiar, but we've made a couple of tweaks here. So the first one is sandboxed. So that's a clear icon indicating that this extension is sandboxed. For those of you who haven't figured it out, the padlock with the cloud means sandboxed, right? That's our icon for sandboxed. And if you look at the extension URL carefully, you'll see that the domain, that's a Tableau environment. What it means is extensions or Tableau user content /sandbox. That's the root URL where the extensions are getting hosted from. I would still recommend that you use this to understand whether it's a sandbox or a network-enabled extension. Okay, next up, extension gallery has sandbox extensions. I'm really excited about this one because I've been working on it for a long time, and hopefully you don't find any glitches. If you do, it's Sean, it's not me, trust me. I'm going to pay for that one. Okay. So how do you land on an extensions gallery? You can always go to Google and search for extensions gallery Tableau. The first link should lead you to that. But there's a way to get there from the dashboard. Drop in an extension spill. There's a button there which says Extensions Gallery. I'm going to click on that one, and it's going to directly land me to the dashboard. A couple of things you'll notice here is that this gallery has been filtered to the version that you logged. So I clicked on the Extensions Gallery from 19.4, so it has been filtered to 19.4. And the version is on the top as well. So all the extensions that you see here will work for 19.4. That's why this flow is really useful, is because you don't have to figure out which version I'm in. Just go to your dashboard, jump into the gallery from there. You can see you will land on a context-specific page. Things to notice here is that you have the extensions icon already on the sandbox icon on some of the extensions. This is actually true. We have around 8 to 9 extensions in gallery which are already sandboxed, and you can just pick it up, drop them in your dashboard, and you should be good to go. Another couple of other changes that we've made is once you go dig deep into one of these extension galleries, you have, okay, let's go into one of them. Let's see if this goes. Oh, awesome. So we landed on the details page of Super Tables. One thing to notice here is that on the bottom right over here, there's a text says works with. Works with is actually going to give you the version that extension works with. There's a link on the bottom which says that if there is an extension available out there that works with a different version, you can go and click on that link, and it's going to jump you directly to that version. So for example, let's say some of your users are okay with using network-enabled extensions, and they are on 18.3 or 19.1, which doesn't support Sandbox, right? So you can click on that link, jump to that extension page, and download it from that. And it also works vice versa. So this is a network-enabled extensions, and you'll find a link at the bottom which says that if you're on 19.4, please go ahead and jump to that extension. Lastly, the permissions dialog. I think I showed you the permissions dialog before. Sandbox extensions, you don't have to worry about the permissions dialog. They don't show up. If it's a network-enabled extension, they do show up. And if your dashboard has like multiple extensions, the permissions dialog is only going to show the network-enabled extension. So you should really carefully pay attention to the text in these dialogs, because they very clearly mention what extensions are actually on the dashboard, and what they will not mention the sandbox extensions because they are inherently safe. But I would always recommend that you talk to your customers and let them know that you should pay attention to these dialogues. I'm going to leave you with a couple of things. Use your tools. What does this mean? You have the safe list, you have the block list, you can turn off extensions in desktop, you can turn off network-enabled extensions in desktop. So there are a lot of things under your control that you can do to keep your environment safe. Use them, be educated about them. Educate your users about them, because you're only as protected as your users, so they should know what data exfiltration means. They should know why a certain kind of extension is not being enabled in a certain dashboard, and they should know what to look for. So it's always nice to keep talking, have an open line of communication with your users and letting them know why a certain feature is enabled or disabled. I'm going to call on Sean again, and he's going to walk you through the dev experience for Sandbox Extensions. And I'm going to turn off my mic.
Okay, good, it worked. All right, we're gonna close with a little bit of some details about how the extension developers test their work and just what that flow looks like a little bit. So first, why would an extension developer, why would I sandbox my extension? Well, it increases customer confidence in your work. It makes it so that it's more easily accessible to people in general. Yeah, so I mean, you also don't have to figure out how to host your own sandbox extension. Raise your hand just for a second if you develop extensions and you're in this room. Okay. All right, cool, a few of you, great. So this isn't totally lost, just kidding. Okay, so how do I do it? Let's get in a little bit. So the first thing is we have a sample online. That sample code, you just clone it to your local machine, right? I'm not going to have you watch this whole process there. After it's cloned, you do an npm install, which will get all of the dependencies for the work. And after those are all loaded on your local machine, you can just start up our local sandboxing environment. This server acts just like our servers. So if you sysadmins also want to see kind of poke around and see if you can make an extension that's sandbox that breaks through, please try. Send us the bug report if you find anything, but we're pretty confident in it. Once the sandboxed extension environment is started up, you can load it in Tableau. Now I'm just going to go through a little example here. This is my extension. This doesn't look right. This text is too small. It's over on the left, so something must have happened. So with debugging tools, we can go to the Tableau debugger website and take a look at there are other sessions on this if any of you sysadmins are curious. And why did that not play? Come on. There we go. Awesome. Technology, right? So once that loads up, this is like an important page. Come on, guys. Nope. Oh, look, it works now. Cool, great, I guess, maybe. Awesome. Anyway, there are a couple errors on the console page saying that content security policy has blocked these extensions from trying to request bootstrap.css from Bootstrap's main page. Now, you know, Bootstrap seems like a pretty like trustworthy company. They're not really trying to get your data, but if you, for some reason, start sending a bunch of health records to them, that would be really bad. That would be really bad. So in this case, we can just go ahead and copy that file and switch to use our local version of it instead. So just a one-line change in this case. And once that code is changed over, and we go ahead and reload our extension from the panel, my goodness, I swear, technology. All right, well, awesome. Yeah, totally works, guys. I thought, I recorded these. I was like, okay, I'm going to record these because there will be less problems than if I was sitting up here like twiddling with the things. Yeah. So this was the big reveal. This was supposed to be the big reveal. But yes, anyway, long story short, there's a whole environment for you to test out how secure these sandbox extensions are and to fix issues with yourself. How do I publish a sandbox extension? Number one, this server that I just told you about, do not deploy this server. Do not put this on a public-facing website. You will be in a world of hurt, not because we don't want you to use the code, it's open source, because it will just break down in a second because it's not meant for production use. But if you want to submit your sandbox extensions for hosting on Tableau Server, use this form. This link is in the slides. Go ahead and it's the same process as a regular gallery submission. So anyway, in summary, dashboard extensions are super powerful, but can also be a data security risk. We've got tools, though. We just talked about a bunch of them. The safe list, the block list, the registry flags on install, Mac and Windows. Lots of tools at your disposal, and just being more informed and knowledgeable. So that was all the content. Here are some resources. Again, that developer program right here, super great. It gives you a 3-user sandbox site on Tableau Online with like the latest bits, like pre-release bits. So if we're working on something that you want to get your hands on early, you'll be able to get it on that website or on that Tableau site. And we highly encourage, because a lot of people don't want to be messing around with their production Tableau deployments. So yeah. Let's do questions.